there were estimated by the end of this year, 350 million people will follow eSports around the world. 40% of these people don't play games. So they're watching, they're spectators, they're fans. And by 2020, eSport revenues are estimated to be probably almost $2 billion. Enough of this history. I took up my 5 minutes. I want you to meet a panel of experts and industry participants who are actually creating this story. I'm going to introduce each of them one by one. They'll have their own remarks, and we will then leave some time for Q&A. So let me start right away. Tony Farwell. Tony is a serial entrepreneur and professional investor. He currently holds several positions, including president of Farwell Capital and managing director of Fruition Ventures. He is the founding investor and chairman of Matcherino, which is an eSports, venture-backed eSports company. And in fact, we have someone with Matcherino here today. Tony has a long history of founding and managing many ventures in different industries, which on a combined basis have raised well over $100 million. The history includes being founder and chairman of GovX, which is the country's largest e-commerce online site devoted exclusively to the military, first responders, and certain government service employees. He co-founded Closing Corp, which is a large real estate database providing closing cost and other information to mortgage banks and professional real estate professionals. He's been involved in Stats Inc., Hollywood Online, which was a public company known as Hollywood Media, and co-founder of TV Data Technologies, which was the country's largest database giving people information about what's on television. Cable South was another company, an MSO, cable television system, which was later sold to Charter, now known as Spectrum. So Tony is the quintessential serial entrepreneur. Just for full disclosure, Tony and I have been partners in some of these businesses, and he's been a friend and a partner of mine for many years. I'm very proud to have him here. He's one of the more creative and smartest entrepreneurs and investors I've known. I first became aware of gaming from Tony's son, Grant, who started Matcherino. He graduated from UCLA with a BA in economics and received a joint MBA from the London School of Economics, the HEC Graduate School of Management in Paris, and the NYU Stern School of Business. So please join me in welcoming Tony. Do you want to stand or do you want to sit down?
No. I'll sit up here. Well, but for Paul, I'm not so sure those ventures would be all that successful. So, and having maybe somebody with gray hair talking about eSports would be a little confounding to some of you. But the more I get into it, the more I get into it, the more I am intrigued as I look at industries, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But first, I want to congratulate the Center for Entrepreneurship, who put this on, Grid Lab, and University of Ohio. My first time being here, Ohio University, I should say, my first time being here, and what a spectacular campus. Boy, really beautiful campus. Went to UCLA undergrad, but I have to say this is a really impressive campus and very impressive to be putting on an event like this. Last week I went to another one in Las Vegas, eSports, not as well, frankly, organized and even as well attended. So congratulations for doing this. Let me switch to manage these slides. So let me at least define what I consider eSports, and many define it more broadly, but basically online multiplayer video game competition. So I'm not talking about online poker, horse racing, in general, not talking about gambling, but that is and could be a big component. Skins, wagering on skins, that sort of thing. So at least so you understand what I think of when I think of this sport. So it's pretty interesting that when I think of eSports, when I first started looking at it, I thought of it as sort of the alternate universe. I don't think major media, I still don't even think major traditional sports leagues know how big it is now, and Paul gave us some of those statistics. I'll give you a little bit more quickly. Nor do I think they have a sense for how big it really will be. And I think the implications for that, the economics of that, I think will be massive. When you think of, in fact, the ESPN president, John Skipper, characterized esports as really not a sport. So then their magazine came out with this observation. So this domain, as evidenced probably as much of all of you here, is really the domain of millennials and X-Geners, and its popularity has grown a little bit beyond that. But that's a very difficult audience to reach. Not many of you look at traditional media, broadcast TV, newspapers, magazines, at least printed. So very tough audience to reach, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But that manifestation of that is in viewership of broadcasting, and of course you've seen a lot about newspaper subscriptions. This is a uniquely engaged audience. I can't actually think of an audience that is as broad, as committed, and as involved as this audience. And I think that will have ripples through broadcast media and certainly traditional sports, and I'll talk a little bit about that. I think the key takeaway on this slide is that if you look at the growing presence, so look at the little highlighted area here. If you look at the where millennials are now with respect to traditional sports, and as it gains popularity, millennials are the largest in terms of population demographic ever in the history of the United States. As they move forward and boomers age out, the implications for major league sports and commerce in general, I think, are massive. Paul talked a little bit about the audience in esports. I think this is way off. Roughly 10 million people visit Twitch TV daily now. So that is pushing, 4 billion. 20% of all YouTube video streams are replays of esports events. So I think the audience, in terms of views, is massive and growing, and it's global. Paul talked a little bit about the revenues, but take a look at the advertising and sponsorship, which is about $500 million. NFL is about $4.5 billion now. NFL started in TV in the early 60s, so just about 60 years into it. Twitch TV started, Paul said 2010, that was Jason TV or whatever it was, but it actually launched in the middle of 2011. So the notion that this is still so early and the implications for its growth are enormous. So let me talk about, we talked about, or I've seen certainly the intro of being an investor. The characteristics that I really like about this industry, and for those of you that are in the business studies or just thinking about whether you'd want to be involved in this industry, one, it's huge. And it's huge kind of quietly. That seems contradictory. How could that possibly be? But it's very large. I talked about a highly engaged audience. Very odd to see such a highly engaged audience. And it's really the fusion of sports itself, social media, interactivity, and then near ubiquity of access. So you bring all those together. I can't always watch an NFL game. I certainly can't if I am in South Korea. So it is highly global, unlike many of our US-based sports. So, and it's also highly fragmented. when you look at this industry, and some of these folks will talk about it, it is a lot of the business models have not emerged and been built into the industry. Much of the software and the opportunities that I think that don't exist now will emerge, and still very young industry that I think has a lot of opportunity in front of it. I tried to identify some of the key categories. One of the things I observe in this industry, and I'll wrap it up with this, is Twitch TV is the dominant player right now, but you can see further down, I describe a few other entities that are serving as streaming platforms for eSports. I think there's going to be a big war, and some of these folks have a lot of money. And when there are those wars, it's best to be, as they say, the munitions salesman. I think those that are feeding productivity, whether you're tournament organizers, whether you're software that enhances or optimizes the use of eSports or the viewership of eSports, the opportunities, and that, I think, will be enormous. So I think there's a lot of wildcatting out there. There's a lot of venture capital chasing very few ventures, legitimate ventures. So I think it's a very ripe and exciting industry. Thank you.
Can I? Okay, Dino Hall. Dino is the business development manager for SMT, an Emmy Award-winning sports technology company. You would know it as the company that developed the virtual yellow first down line in NFL football games. SMT's broadcast and event services enable clients, whether broadcast networks, teams, or governing bodies, to produce premium data-integrated and real-time shows, deliver stadium fan engagement for the sports and entertainment industries. SMT supports events annually on 6 of the 7 continents with an international customer base that includes the Tour de France, the Open Championship, Roland Garros, and the Olympic Games. SMT's products have evolved from, as I said, the first down line, first on-screen clock and score graphics in 1994 to state-of-the-art, innovative and sophisticated virtual graphics, tracking technology, statistical applications. Dino oversees the continued development and expansion of SMT into emerging markets, specifically eSports. Dino has served in different capacities with several major league professional teams, both football and basketball. He launched his career at SMT in 2010. He signed major eSports clients such as EA, Red Bull Media House, and is it Machinima? Forget it. He earned his MBA in sports management from Florida Atlantic University and his BA from Dartmouth College. He lives in New Jersey. I love companies like SMT because of the innovative kind of technologies that underlie the success when you never would have thought that a fan engagement company would be big and successful. So please welcome Dino with me.
A lot of kind of pretty pictures and a lot of things that go up on the screen. But behind everything we do is really is data and utilizing data to create these interesting displays. By integrating that into live sports, we kind of create the ability for fans to better understand those sports through analysis from talent, through graphics that are put on screen, through something like the virtual first down line, where by 20 years ago, that did not exist, and so someone who is sitting down and watching an NFL game for the first time might have a very difficult time understanding everything that's going on, all the nuances. Now you can kind of see the short-term goals and what is going on and what is needed to for the team to advance the ball for the next first down. And that's kind of where we see ourselves getting into eSports and kind of where we have gotten in with a couple of our clients, primarily EA and Red Bull. The idea is that over time, as these games grow in popularity as a spectator sport, the game developers are going to start, and some already have, to their credit, Riot, Valve, and this year EA will be kind of producing APIs that allow live access to the data that is coming from their games. And what we've been doing is working with a number of those companies to consult on how to best utilize that data during live events, as well as to create these services and these technologies that allow that data to be shown to and given to both fans and to commentators. If you watch, I'm sure a lot of you watch some Twitch cast and are, understand like the game casters that are calling different games. If you know the game very well, it's very easy to follow along. If you don't, it might not be as easy. And so we really want to help broadcasters and developers and producers to lower the barrier to entry so that these games become much easier for people who maybe aren't as entrenched in the community to follow, as well as give hardcore fans and people who have been in the game a long time and know it, the ability to really take deep dives into data and understand what makes this player better than this player, and what are the key statistics for each game that allow you to really see what separates the number 1 player from the number 2 or the number 3 player. Utilizing that data live gives the game casters sitting in front of them, that data allows them to call these games and to utilize the data instead of having to utilize some holistic way of telling you how this person is better than this person. But it gives them some cold, hard facts to be able to back up what they're saying. And it allows you as a fan to better understand the game that is being played. And so really what we see ourselves as is a broadcast enhancement, a production enhancement company that helps people to better understand and to better follow and to better enjoy some of their favorite games or some of their favorite events that they're just trying to start getting into and trying to understand a little bit better. We do this for the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, MLB, as well as the PGA and WTA, and we're looking to bring this into the eSports world. And obviously we kind of already have in some different capacities, but we're really looking to build that up in the future and be able to really create some cool, interesting enhancements for these productions that get people who maybe don't understand the game more into it and really give people who do understand the game more of what they want. Thank you.
Okay, let's meet one of these athletes, these players who's spent much of the last 6 years professionally competing. Austin Shot Lonsert. Do they call you Shot?
They call me Shot.
All right. He grew up in Southern California, started playing League of Legends, fell out of love with that game, fell in love with Heroes of the Storm, and he started competing when I guess that game was still in development. For much of the past 6 years, Austin has been a competitive pro player. He was a member of the Cognitive Gaming Organization, which ran several teams owned by David Fry of Fry's Electronics. Austin was motivated to compete further when that organization and team disbanded. He enrolled at Arizona State University, where he participated in Heroes of the Dorm Championship. In 2016, the Arizona State Real Dream Team took first place with an undefeated season in those championships. Austin just graduated from ASU this past May. The Heroes of the Dorm competition awarded $75,000 per person. And another event that Austin participated in, BlizzCon event, awarded or had a grand prize of $1 million for the winning team. Austin is currently playing for a team called Flame is Lame.
I'll explain.
All right. But he has experience coaching teams, coaching individual players, participating in live tournaments, and does have a marketing background. He certainly is one of those individuals who believes the future of entertainment will largely lie in these kind of interactive video esport competitions, and it'll grow in importance as an industry. So welcome, Austin Schott Lonsert.
Thank you. First, I'll explain my team name real quick. So, Flame is a coined term for esport players, basically, where it's kind of like bad manner towards other people, where it's like you tell someone they suck at the game and blah, 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 and they get really upset, and that's considered flaming them. So we decided on the name Flame is Lame. So that's the origin of that real quick. So I just real quick wanted to talk to you about my experience and the hardships of esports from a player's perspective. And the reason why I'm standing at the podium is because I haven't gotten a hang of this public speaking thing, and I'll dance around if I'm over there. So I want to tell you my story real quick. I started at college when I played League of Legends nonstop. I loved the game. I was in University of Colorado, Colorado Springs at the time. It was my first semester away from home. I was playing the game nonstop. I neglected my classes because I didn't really care for them. I didn't find them interesting. I just hadn't found out what I was interested in yet. So I played League of Legends all the time. Failed that semester, naturally. However, I got to the highest rank that you can achieve in League of Legends called Challenger. And I got extremely excited about this. And when I came home, disappointed in myself for the semester, however, extremely proud of myself for my video game achievement, I asked my mother, could I take a chance at going competitive and playing professionally in video games? Now, obviously, mothers would say, hell no, you're not allowed to do that. But I pleaded and asked her to ask around and see what others thought about it. So she asked my friends and my siblings, and they said, if anyone's going to go competitive and play video games for a living, it'll be Austin. My brother said, there's nobody else that I consider good enough to play video games at a professional level that I know personally, and he was my mentor originally when I first started playing League of Legends. So I played League of Legends. I fell out of love with it, like Paul said, and I eventually moved to Heroes of the Storm, where I joined Cognitive Gaming eventually, and they removed me off of the team before the team was disbanded due to personality issues. Not all teams get along, not all players get along, and that happens in esports. It's all about finding the right match of players. So when I was removed, I was very, very dedicated to get back on stage, back on competitions, back in finishing first place every time as much as I can. And when a fellow competitor named Akaface, who now plays for an organization called Gale Force eSports, approached me and said, hey, he kind of made a joke about it. They had come in second place at Arizona State for Heroes of the Dorm the previous year. And he said, hey, Shoddy, which is my nickname. They're like, hey, Shoddy, wouldn't it be funny if you came to ASU, we would win for free, ha, ha, ha. And I was like, oh, yeah, that'd be really funny. And then I started to think, wait, is that legally allowed? And I searched through the rules of Heroes in the Dorm, and there's nothing against school recruitment. It's very much like sports recruitment, where investors will go out, or scouts will go out to high school athletes and get them to come to their college to play for them. So I enrolled, and the team of the year before me was called the Dream Team, and then I joined, so then we renamed it to the Real Dream Team. We went undefeated in a competition with 490 teams. Over 190 schools participated in the event, and we all won our full tuition in prize, which was fantastic. During the finals, I didn't even notice the crowd. Like right now, I notice all of you, and it's scaring me a lot. But during the competition, mine's gone completely blank, only focused on the game. As soon as we win, we're screaming our heads off, jump out of our chairs, confetti's blasting. We go shake hands. I more hugged people than shook hands, but then I came back, and then the host of the show asked me, shot, you're almost in tears. What's going through your mind right now? And I couldn't hold it together. And I found my mom, who had been supporting me the entire time, who had come out to Seattle to watch me play. And in like an emotional voice, I was like, "Mom, you don't have to pay, I got you." And I see my mom just blubbering, completely in tears, and so I started breaking down and I started crying on stage with my hands in my face. Esports has created an incredible experience for me, but there are plenty of hardships. It's created a never-ending bond with my mother that I never had, and the hardships that we face are uncountable. The teams currently, since there is no real regulation or control in the lesser esports, which would be my game. Heroes of the Storm is not the most popular game in the world, but I love it nonetheless. These less popular esports, all the teams are mostly ran by the players, regardless if they are owned by an organization. There is no real support group for them, so they make their own decisions, they kick their own players, they pick up their own players, and it becomes very much a drama-filled situation. And that is not acceptable in my mind. I don't agree with players having full control of their rosters. On top of that, many players, many teams that aren't extremely successful, that aren't going to the World Championships every single year, are very much underpaid. A typical contract for Heroes of the Storm right now for the lowest paid professional team is around $400 a month per player, which is less than minimum wage. Which you can understand the point of view from the contractors. They say, "Oh, you're playing a video game, it must be fun. Why should we pay you that much?" My godfather told me this saying this week, and I loved it. If you love your job, you're not working hard enough. I almost despise the game right now. I mean, I love it to death. I love it, but it's a job now. I put in almost 10 hours a day every single day, honing my craft. And the amount of money that we're paid, the amount of representation we get is, I mean, I love all the fact that we get any at all, considering where we came from underground tournaments, but I still don't think it is enough for a sustainable life in esports as a player. On top of that, even managers and coaches do not get the best support. Many managers and coaches are considered kind of the lackeys of teams, where the managers are glorified schedulers. They schedule scrims with other managers of teams, and they just put it on a document and say, "This is when you need to show up, play those. I will deal with your interviews," or whatever. They get paid even less than us. A lot of organizations also collect money on the behalf of players for prize pool. It's pretty common to have a prize cut for an organization, since they pay you on top of being in a pro division. They pay you monthly, as well as if I was in the pro division currently in Heroes of the Storm, Blizzard Entertainment runs the game, they would be paying me 20 grand a year. So then I would get my organization money on top of that. However, for all tournament winnings, organizations typically, an average contract is around 15% of your prize winnings goes to an organization. Am I correct on that? Exactly. It's average about 15%. That would be a good contract. Right. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you guys that playing video games for a living sucks. Currently. I know it'll get better. I know that many business people are looking to get into esports, and many of the people in this very room will help this become a sustainable place for all of us to participate in safely and affordably. And I'm not going to be able to get through everything that I want to say, because it would take me 4 hours to talk. So I urge you, if you don't have your answer questioned after the Q&A, to seek me out and talk to me. I would love to talk to each and every one of you if I could. But all in all, I just wanted to let you know the amazing experiences that we get, as well as the downsides. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Terrific. Good job. Good job. I thought that was terrific. Taylor is a young game industry entrepreneur. He is currently the Chief Marketing Officer and Head of Business Development for Matcherino, which is a venture-backed esports company based in Seattle. Taylor dropped out of Humboldt State in his junior year to start his first company. I told him not to give that out as advice to the OU students here. HubTag was an eSport technology company working with EA, Twitch, GameWorks, and other large-scale enterprise companies on their live streaming technology and their strategies. In addition to his current role at Matcherino, Taylor is on the board of directors for the Pro Aerial League, a drone racing company. So now we're really getting beyond my realm of familiarity. He also serves as an executive producer for GE2 Live, which is an experiential entertainment event in Seattle. So for those of you who are entrepreneurial students here or have entrepreneurial aspirations regardless of your college, listen to Taylor today, because he's not that far in time and experience from any of you. Join me in welcoming Taylor Ward.
I'm good. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, so I'll keep this short and sweet so we have some time for Q&A. But yeah, I ran HubTag for about 5 years, and we focused on the broadcasting side of esports. The broadcasting side has been very exciting since, the Twitch days took off. And so, one of the big things that we focused on at HubTag was what I like to call the infrastructure layer of esports. There's a lot of teams and great organizations out there, but the industry overall has a lot of work to do in laying the groundwork for future growth. And so at HubTag, we focus mainly on the broadcast infrastructure. We did back-end technology that is too boring to talk about, to be honest. But it was a great experience in learning what these large-scale publishers, sponsors, and teams really saw as a return on investment for playing or participating in these tournaments. So HubTag sold earlier this year, and I joined the Matcherino team, Grant Farwell over there, to again focus on the infrastructure layer. So Matcherino, essentially what Matcherino is a payout management system. In the good old days of esports, you would send money to a nameless PayPal account. Everyone would send it in, you'd play, and then maybe you get the money back. Maybe the organizer would just bail and take your money with you. And those are the good old days. So essentially what Matcherino does is it brings transparency to the process. A good way to think about it is an escrow account for a prize pool. So users can either donate money through crowdfunding, purchase a ticket, and part of those proceeds go to the prize pool, or buy a product on the Matcherino platform with proceeds, again, going to the prize pool. So the one big thing we notice is it's not rocket science. The bigger the prize pool, the more interest in your event. So really what Matcherino is doing is A, bringing transparency to the payment processing, and B, working with tournament organizers and event organizers to maximize the prize pool. Again, you were saying that, pay is a very touchy subject in esports right now. And the bigger the prize pools, the more the players get paid, the more the organizers get paid. So we see this as an essential part of the growth of the overall industry. And one of the things that we're doing in addition to working with TOs is we're working with casinos and venues to outfit them with the proper esport equipment, design experiences that are engaging to go to and participate. Esports is primarily online right now. You watch a broadcast, you're in your house, you're doing whatever you want. And so to go to an actual event, you have to make it very compelling to leave the comforts of your own home, essentially. And so part of what Matcherino is doing is we're working very closely with the venues in designing experiences that draw in audiences, boost the broadcast ratings, and provide a little bit of return on investment for the venues. The millennials, the M word, is the holy demographic right now. Everyone wants a piece of you. And so, by connecting players, venues, and sponsors all within the same environment, we see everyone taking a piece of that prize pool home. So, again, I'll keep this short and sweet so we have time for Q&A. But, like I said, Matcherino, we handle the payment management system, make sure there's transparency to the process, and, want to make your events bigger. Thanks.
Okay, we have a fascinating executive to round out this panel before we get to Q&A. Dana Kawar has two current professional positions. She is the Chief Operating Officer of Flipside Tactics. Flipside is a professional esports team with world championships in multiple divisions, pro teams in different leagues, different games. It's a global organization with rosters in Europe, North America, South America, Africa. Dana is also the Chief Commercial Officer of Stats Helix. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Stats Helix is a software development company, an analytics company focused on the esports industry. Stats Helix helps or provides first-class programs and statistics for esports productions, professionals and casual users as well. Dana is not just a manager in these companies, she's an owner. She acts as an industry consultant for both endemic and non-endemic brands. She's worked in the industry since she was 15 years old, starting as a promoter of LAN centers and certain players. She's been a volunteer at countless events. She's been a player manager, a team manager, a liaison with sponsors for companies, an administrator of websites, including a Pokemon website, trading website, and has worked with Dota 2 virtual item trading sites. She is really a jack of all trades, and I can't think of many people for this kind of a panel who would have more experience and more insight into this evolution of games to professional sports and spectator events than Dana. So join me in welcoming Dana.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. This is actually a first for me in esports. I've never actually been on a panel, though I've come to many of them. So thank you again very much for having me. For me, the spectatorship in esports, I've been around esports since before the word existed. Since we were just gamers in basements carrying our humongous PCs around to each other's houses to play together, or going to tournaments, which were, four of us who lived in the same city, just showing up to play together. And for me, the spectatorship really took hold in 2011 when Justin TV became Twitch at the same time StarCraft 2 released, which was really one of the first games in history that started from the ground up as a game that was going to be designed for competition. And the real thing that matters in esports spectatorship that isn't really the same with pro sports or anything else is the interactivity with fans. Not to disagree with Tony, I'm so sorry, Tony, but even 2 days ago, Adam Silver was talking about, from the NBA, that's the head of the NBA, was talking about getting consultancy with Twitch and Amazon to figure out how to help TV viewership, which is dropping, by increasing the interactivity with the fan base and increasing how people watch their sport. So one of my favorite moments, and what I've had the privilege of doing in my 17 years in esports, is actually attending some of the events that everybody's been talking about. I have been backstage for those events. I've been on the stage with my teams as they compete for world championships, and I've sat in the audience, and there's absolutely nothing like it in the world, despite being an avid pro sports spectator as well. I love going to football games, baseball games, everything. I love live sports. There's nothing like esports. And what esports does differently is now you're starting to see sort of a replay factor in esports. You're starting to see a little bit more things with like SMT, where you get to actually have replay and a little bit more like pro sports, which is great. But what we did first before pro sports really did it is we have people that are fans of the lore behind games and the branding and the characters. So one of my favorite moments in esports spectatorship actually happened at TI3. Navi was playing a team called Orange, and there was sort of a huge play that happened with a hero called Enigma, who has a move called a black hole, which he just basically goes like this and just sucks in all the characters of the other team. Not 10 seconds after this happens, a guy in the audience stands up and all the cameras turn towards him, and he's standing sort of head to toe in a purple bodysuit that's just shimmering, and he's doing this exact same move. And it was even immortalized on Valve's YouTube, which was incredible because it was really one of the first times that we saw that interactivity in the spectatorship of esports. So I think that's really what makes the difference from esports to pro sports. And we're at a stage now in esports where we're right there with professional sports. I would say comparably, we're around when pro sports was starting to sign their TV rights deals. They're way ahead of us now still because they already have the TV rights. But we're at that stage where those things are really coming to fruition. And people like Facebook, people like Twitch, people like Twitter, people, the TV channels are all making big bids for live entertainment because that's what people want to consume. And we're basically there. Tony, I'm sorry, but hopefully we will get there faster. I'm so sorry, I'm so nervous. That's my favorite part about it, and I think that's what differentiates esports from pro sports. And I think that we have to change how sports are consumed. So in the 17 years that I've been a part of esports, we went from a stage where unless you were standing at the event itself and watching the event itself, you didn't get to watch the event, period. And then we got to a stage where there was either a place that you could download the event and watch it after it happened, or you could buy a VHS or a DVD or something like that to be able to purchase it at home and watch it. And then we were able to watch it live. And now we're at a stage where not only can you watch it live or be at the venue, but you can interact with everybody. You can interact with the casters. One of my favorite things that eLeague does is you're able to submit sort of, photoshops of players and clips that are happening and stuff like that, and they put it into the live broadcast itself. So I think that's where we're at in esports spectatorship. Thanks, guys.
Questions, please. You've got a lot of different perspectives here. Does anybody have any questions? Come up to the mic. I will start with a question, which is if capital was not an issue, what kind of a business would you start in esports? Or would you be a player of great talent?
I'd be a player.
You'd be a player. What are some other ideas?
I'd be a production company.
Go ahead. Pick up the microphone and explain.
Yeah, so if capital's not in question, then being a production company and really blowing out an esports production and bringing it to and producing it at a level that you'd see on something like the Super Bowl or something like the NBA Finals, and adding the enhancements that were necessary to what I would say draw in a greater number of people. That's kind of where I think I would go, because a lot of the productions that are done on esports are very good. I feel like there is certainly room to kind of formalize that process and kind of create some really cool fan enhancements that are specific to esports. And I think we've just kind of started tapping into that as of right now.
Anybody else? Dana?
Not to sort of toot my own horn or anything like that, but I would do exactly what I'm doing. I would remain an esports org. I think that the biggest barriers to entry to being an organization is, capital. So with no limits to capital, I could pick up every team that I wanted, every player that I wanted, and not have any of the risk-reward situations that I have to deal with on a daily
Well, but
basis.
suppose you were limiting a reasonable pitch for capital. Is that still a good business?
I think that it would still, okay, so it's not going to be as as we stand today, it's still not going to be as profitable a business as being a production company. But I think in the long term, I think it has more longevity than even the production companies do, because eventually when things come under a governing body or a certain set league, there's going to be a very limited number of production companies that are going to be able to host those things, while there will be more teams than there will be production companies, and you just would hope to be one of the sort of old boys that are left at the end of the line. So.
Okay, so we've got questions. This is great. Kurt, you want to start? Just say your name and, you know, where you're coming from.
My name is Kurt Kissinger. I'm a junior here. Doesn't sound, I'm a junior here? Okay, I'll speak loud. I'm a junior here at OU, and I know each of you have a different perspective on the esports industry as a whole. And Dana, you mentioned a little bit about spectatorship becoming ever more immersive. What do you all think the role VR will play in spectatorship of esports?
Is it? Okay, sorry. I think it's going to be huge. I think that we're seeing that transition in both esports and pro sports to be able to consume that live viewership in more ways than one, right? So in sort of NASCAR and stuff like that, you now have the in-car views, right? You have NFL Red Zone. You have so many ways to view games, from podcasts to shows to replays to everything like that. I think that VR is just going to be the next stage in that, where you're legitimately going to be able to sit in a game on the ground, right? So instead of watching the international like we watch it now, where you sit in a stadium and you only see sort of that top-down view, or you see the odd replay, you're going to be able to stand in a booth and be like, I plan on being, you know, Enigma in this game, and you get to sit there and see the game through the eyes of the character. I think it's going to be fantastic to see.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. I mean, obviously VR is the next immersion step. I do think it is going to be another, 5 years or so before it actually becomes practical. One of the biggest barriers to VR is everyone having a VR headset, obviously, to watch these things. I think in the short term, you're going to see a lot more augmented reality start popping up at these events. The Dota 2 International is known for this, where they'll put augmented reality on the stage, they'll animate the stage and the map. So I think, in the short term, augmented reality is going to play a large role in, because esports is unique. You can pull that game data, you can recreate those characters and stuff. So I think AR in the short term is going to be very big. Obviously, I think VR down the road is going to be large as well.
I definitely would basically say the same. I mean, from a player's perspective, I would want to play my character from the eyes of my character. Instead of this top-down view where I control it with, obviously I would still have to use a mouse and keyboard probably, depending on how evolved the video games get at that point. But from a spectator's perspective, yes, it's fantastic. You could even go to the route of, you can't go to the LAN event or the live event. Okay, well, I want to go into VR so I can sit in a chair in VR at the event, and I can hear the crowd in 360 all clapping their noisemakers. Like, not even necessarily in the game, you could be at the event. And I just would 100% echo what both of them said on addition to that.
Okay. This gentleman?
Okay,
I'm sorry. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just kind of one thing that I think what everyone said is probably correct here. The one aspect that I think needs to be taken into account when thinking about VR is the communal aspect of watching a live event. And, whether you're on watching an event on Twitch or you're watching an event with a bunch of watching an NFL game with your friends. Right now, I think VR is a very solitary experience in a lot of ways. So I think for it to really take off is something that really enhances the overall spectator experience and not like a set group of people. They need to kind of overcome that solitary experience that it is right now and make it more of a communal event where you can be in the VR world with your friends and still be able to interact with them in a kind of realistic way.
There's a lot of people. This is great. I want to get to all these questions.
Hi, Andreas Tan. I'm a sophomore here. When it comes to professional sports leagues, really they have a lot of regulation, and I think with esports, you kind of don't see that lack of regulation. So what do you guys think are the next steps to kind of regulating esports?
That's a tough one. You got it. Let me think.
I would say standardization of data. Each game is unique. Each game is scored differently. Each game has different league rules. So esports presents a unique challenge compared to traditional sports, where there's a variety of different ways to standardize that data. For example, if casinos now are very interested in doing esports betting, but the biggest barrier there is the regulation and the anti-cheat and the match fixing and all that kind of stuff. So there needs to be some kind of standard across the variety, whether it's the top titles or all titles. There needs to be enough data to actually construct that standard, essentially.
I think it's a great question, and I think there will be, as the large publishers seek to create integrity around the games and the events, particularly as they grow, there'll be compliance requirements, either industry imposed or, at least in North America and other areas, and having a compliance system to assure that you're meeting those standards will be another opportunity. But I think you're on it. I think it's a little rogue now, and that will change.
Thank you, guys.
General?
Yes, hi. I'm Andrew Homan. When it comes to reaching new fans, because esports is so big and there are so many different games, and you were talking about how the scoring is different and each game is very unique, what do you guys see as kind of maybe the game or the key to reaching new fans? Is it something like the NBA E-League, where, of course, they're trying to reach your guys' current fans, but also I'm sure you guys are hoping people will latch onto that? What is going to be the key for you guys to reach traditional sports fans, do you think?
I think that gaming has it a little bit easy, and esports has it a little bit easy when it comes to reaching new fans, actually. I think traditional sports are the ones who are going to have a harder time keeping the new generation of fans than gaming, because gaming as a viewership is watched way more than esports is, right? Esports is a very small subsection of gaming. So as these kids who are growing up as gaming viewers, right, start caring a little bit more about certain games, they're going to be like, hey, I compete in this. Maybe I want to watch somebody else compete in this who's maybe a little better than I am, right? So it's just sort of a natural progression into watching esports as you age in the gaming sphere. So I think that we're not actually going to have to work very hard to gain new viewers. It's just going to naturally progress towards that. But I think the interactivity of gaming and esports viewership in general, and just how much content is out there to view already, and how interesting it is, and how interactive fans can be with like Twitch chats and Twitter and Facebook and Periscope and all of those things where you can interact with these players as well, makes it very easy to reach new fans.
I would say that I think Dana's probably right in the long term, that as millennials grow into it, they're just going to naturally progress as fans, and they're going to start making more money, and eventually they'll have kind of pockets that'll help pay for advertising dollars, right? So I think in the short term, lowering the barrier to entry so that if you do try to put an esport event on a linear broadcast network, making it so that people who are watching it who maybe are interested in it, don't necessarily know the game or know much about esports, making it so that they can easily understand kind of what's going on. I think that's a big thing to helping to grow maybe a group that's not necessarily watching on Twitch right now. But yeah, I mean, give it 10, 15 years and all of a sudden it's not going to be an issue. But I think that in the short term, that's probably the way to go. Thank you.
I think the most important thing for a video game to be accessible to a wider audience is for it to be easily spectated. League of Legends and like MOBAs in general, which are multiplayer online battle arenas, they have this top-down view, and every objective is very, very clearly stated, and the casters repeat it over and over and over again. Oh, the dragon's spawning, they gotta go get that. I think the most important for video games is to be one of those spectator sports. Like any new game on the block, Overwatch is actually criticized for this because it's a first-person shooter, which has been successful in the past, like Counter-Strike, except Counter-Strike is just guys with guns shooting each other, right? Overwatch, you have tons of different characters, not the greatest camera work as of yet, and they all have different abilities. So it's very hard to understand what's going on, and I think you need to find a very, very fine balance between spectating and gameplay.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dylan Wright. I'm a junior here. If I watch esports, I tend to watch it on Twitch, or if I watch after it's been broadcast, I watch it on YouTube, right? With traditional, a lot of separate networks, right? So you have stuff on ESPN, you have stuff on Fox, and so on. Do you think in the long run there'll be an issue with all esports being centered on one service, such as Twitch, rather than diversified through many streaming services?
No. So you have Google and YouTube purchasing content right now. You have Facebook purchasing broadcasting rights. You have Twitch purchasing broadcasting rights. Between these, and even Microsoft and Mixer now. So you have, the four big guys are all vying for this content, and they're trying to get it on their own platform. And so I don't think you'll see it's all on Twitch. I think Twitch was the first to do it. They're the forerunner, and rightfully so in my mind. But all of these companies, they smell money in the water, and they want it on their platform, and they want to feed their advertisements. And so I think you'll see broadcasting rights will bring in a good amount of revenue for esports, more so this year than previous years. But you'll have a nice spread between the platforms because they're all vying for this type of content.
I actually think that it will follow some of the trends you've seen in traditional broadcast, in that it'll be more oligopolistic. There'll be 3 or 4 or more major platforms.
It'll be easy to access them. And I think you'll see publishers doing, exclusives with certain platforms. And I would expect, but Amazon's pretty big, but I'll expect they'll get some competition with other platforms. Which will, by the way, if you look at sports rights and everything else, that kind of money will trickle down to players, because no one's coming to watch it unless they like the players. So I do think Austin's life will get a little richer. and it's inconceivable that, major league quarterbacks get, $165 million. I think those rights fees will move down in the food chain to the players, but I think there'll be multiple platforms.
I agree. I don't think that we're in any way afraid that there's going to be sort of a single monopoly for all esports by any stretch of the imagination. I think that, we've already listed your Facebooks, your Twitters, your everything like that, but TV is also coming into esports. So NBC, ESPN, Disney, CW, DirecTV, these are all now TV channels that are also bidding for esports. I think that what we're more realistically going to see is certain games selling exclusivity to certain channels. So you might have a monopoly over Counter-Strike, or a monopoly over Dota 2 or League of Legends, but I don't think you're going to see any individual entity having all of esports under them.
Thank you.
All right, I'm Wyatt Harmon. I'm a junior here at OU, and the gist I've gotten from listening to you guys talk today is that esports is ready to explode, but one of the biggest barriers to growth is that there's just no governing body, really whatsoever, than just that I've gotten. And just wanted to get you guys' opinion on what kind of company you think is going to come and drop some regulations on the esports world and make it look more like the traditional sports landscape.
I mean, I definitely agree. There is no governing body, so to speak, right now. And the phrase I like to call esports right now is it's the wild, wild west. Everyone gets what they go, usually so everyone's fighting for everything. And production companies fight for what they want, and organizations fight for who they want, blah, 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 blah. In that, a lot of people get screwed over. And I don't know what governing body will come into play. Maybe it's ESPN, who knows? Maybe they'll finally be like, okay, maybe we made a mistake. Maybe they're a sport or whatever. But I don't know what it will be, but we definitely need one where it can be, this is the set guidelines. These are the rules. If you can't follow the rules, we don't want you, and we won't monetize you or whatever. Because as it is right now, in my mind at least, this is all my opinion, this is not fact, is that without the rules and the regulations, the players will screw each other over, the organizations will screw each other over, as well as the players, and then the companies on top of that will screw over the organizations and the players. And it'll just keep trickling down to the very bottom end, which always ends up being the players, because a lot of companies have this mindset where it's like, oh, they're just kids, they don't know what they deserve, so we can abuse them. And I do think that we need something, but I don't know what it would be, so I can't tell you that.
I want to try to get these last two questions in before we get ready for our closing speaker. Do you want to go? Dana, you want to?
Oh, sure.
I want to wrap this up quick, though, so I can get to these last two questioners.
Just on the governing body one, I think that you're absolutely right. It's definitely a wild, wild west. But I don't think that a governing body is going to come out of a TV channel or anything like that. I think that the two most logical places for it to come from is either go with the riot approach and make the game developer the governing body. Alternatively, for where the game developer doesn't want to be the governing body is going to come naturally out of either a conglomerate of team owners mixed with a players union, mixed with, some tournament organizers that all come to some type of agreed set of guidelines that everybody is going to work with. I don't think it's going to come overnight. I think that we're already seeing the beginnings of it with things like sort of PEA and WESA popping up. I just don't think that we're there yet, and it's certainly not all-inclusive even within a single game. So I think that we're still a few years away, but it is coming.
But it's not so bad to have a low barrier to participation, because eventually you'll have to probably be certified and you'll be checked for other, non-compliance. So that, I think, will happen. And the industry is, from what I gather, is trying to self-regulate so that there isn't a need to go beyond that.
And just one thing, just to add real quick, I think it's going to be less about an overall esports governing body as opposed to each individual game having its own governing body. It's like if you say like an esports governing body, it's like saying a sports governing body. It's not like there's one organization that does the NBA, MLB, and the NFL. It's like each of them have to have their own centralized governing body to really, I think, be effective.
Okay, let's go to this gentleman.
Hi, I'm JJ Burns. I'm a junior in the games program here. You guys mentioned a few things that developers have done right and wrong in terms of making games viable for like an esports situation. So I'm just wondering what you guys think developers and publishers could maybe do to just make, from your perspective, esports more entertaining, I guess, and just better, like games that are better for esports.
I'll be real quick on this. I think they're developing a game, if they would include an API that allows for real-time access to the data in that game, so that it can be aggregated both for live use, but also for just being able to save that off and be able to utilize it later for analysis. To me, that in my business, to me that would be the holy grail.
Also, gearing a game where you intend for people to watch it is very, very good. So there's been so many games that have come out that are fantastic games to play, and the community really wants to watch it, but the spectator mode of the game just isn't there. So I think that that's hugely important because esports is meant to be viewed, so you have to take that into account when developing.
I would agree with both of them, and that's actually something that pro players request all the time, is an API, all the time. It's literally the #1 request from pro players from the developer, and that's all I really have to add.
Yeah, I have one sentence on that point. And if you're talking from the development standpoint, easy to play, difficult to master.
Okay, let's get our last question. Let me just say before we wrap this panel up, about 5 minutes after we finish here, John is going to go through some relevant announcements, prizes, and then we're going to have a keynote speaker, very important individual in the esport and video game industry historically, so please stick around for that.
Hi, there we go. My name is Samantha, and my question is, in regards to the growth of the industry and the future of the industry, what are you excited about besides VR, and what keeps you up at night aside from the salary disparities? Jesus.
What keeps me up at night in the industry is, it's just the no regulations, really. It's what, this is buzzing and I'm not happy with it. But what I'm really upset is like anyone can do anything in esports right now, where anyone can say anything about another person. Obviously, in certain esports, it's different. Like League of Legends and Dota, there are fines for certain organizations and what people put on Twitter or so on and so forth. However, in the game, it's very hard to track. There's a lot of verbal abuse that goes on, which isn't the biggest deal. You just get thick skin, like get over it. But it's mostly infighting with teams is what keeps me up at night. I wake up every single day afraid that one of my players is gonna yell at somebody else on my team and quit. And it terrifies me every single day because then I have to find a new player, which takes at least 2 weeks, which is a very, very short tryout period. And that's what keeps me up at night.
So the scariest things for me in esports are the apathy by all parties. So I agree with Tony that esports is trying to be self-regulating. The problem with that is that it's not everybody that's in esports that's attempting to be a part of that regulation. Some people are just happy with the status quo or happy to let it ride and just happy to let whatever happens to them happen to them. And I don't think that we're progressing as quickly as we should be to sort of the regulations or a governing body or something to help protect against those things because of apathy like that. You have to, especially as a player, you have to care about your rights. You have to care what happens to you. You have to be vocal about it. You have to get yourself an agent, get yourself a lawyer, get yourself somebody who knows how to negotiate. Read a contract, please. Please read your contracts. It's so important. My favorite things about esports are the fandom. That's by far the most hopeful aspect of esports. The pictures that Paul put up earlier about Poland and IEM, I stood in that stadium. I watched VP, which is the Polish team, play in that stadium, and every hair on my body was standing on end when people started cheering for them. It was incredible. Standing at the international when one of the American teams is playing one of the Chinese teams and hearing the USA chants versus the China chants is unlike anything in this world. And I've been to the Super Bowl and I've been at the Stanley Cup. I've been to more live sporting events than than esports events even in my lifetime. But esports events, there's just nothing like that fandom because it's grown so far in so few years compared to live sports, which people have been, fans of certain teams for generations within a family. So.
And for me to kind of tie this to the keynote speaker here, I think it's cracking the monetization model. Josh is really a pioneer in the freemium model, which was a game changer for mobile gaming. But you have a lot of traditional sports moving into the space now, trying to, stamp traditional sport monetization models on esports, which is not going to work. So I think, for me as an industry as a whole is, yes, we want to lift some stuff from, traditional sports and the broadcasting rights and the merch and all that kind of stuff. But it's really figuring out what is the right monetization model for this type of audience. For mobile gaming, it's freemium, that Josh invented. But, what is it for esports large? What is a monetization model that applies to all of these fragmented communities and puts more money in the player's pocket and more money in the organizer's pocket? And so, that's what I think really needs to be solved moving forward. Is there's obviously infrastructure things that need to go in place, but a monetization model that applies to all the communities is something that's going to be needed for the health of the industry.
I think echoing what Dana said about the fans are probably what I'm most optimistic about, and that also sometimes leads to the thing that I worry most about, because you have such a rabid fan base that is so into and knows the game so well and knows these games so well. And what it reminds me a lot of in kind of some traditional sports where it's maybe a smaller fan base of very rabid fans, and they become very insular with their love of it, and they don't necessarily want to let it go and to grow to other groups. And soccer in North America is something that always comes to mind. Like I enjoy watching soccer, but if you're with a hardcore soccer fan and you don't know the ins and outs of everything, like they sometimes get mad at you, and then you kind of like it a little bit less. So the whole thing is I want to make sure that I think esports is going to grow and kind of broaden its appeal, and it's one of those things where you just want to make sure that you hope that the fans want it to do that as well.
just to add to that as well, super quickly, an esports fan will also never yell at you for not knowing enough about their game. They're happy to sit there and talk through the entire game with you every step of the way. So.
I think the advertising, the sponsorships, and the big publishers are going to, we talked a little bit about this, but they're going to insist on higher integrity. So those kind of risks, I think, will be somewhat self-correcting. So that'll be the worry side. On the positive side, the viewership is growing, and I think the more people play, the more likely they are going to want to watch it. And so as more games come out, particularly games that are free, that make it easy for them to monetize in other ways, game skins, downloadable content, other ways, I think that will engage further people to jump in and take advantage of the sport.
Listen, join me. I want to thank everybody here.